She doesn't even know what day it is, Your Honor. She can barely dress herself. My stepmother said it calmly, without hesitation. She sat 3 feet away from me in that courtroom, wearing my late father's credit card on her wrist, a Cartier watch he had given her 2 Christmases ago, and told the judge I was mentally incompetent. I didn't react. I didn't cry. I simply folded my hands in my lap and counted silently. 14. That was the number of days she had left before losing everything she had taken from my family. Let me ask you honestly, have you ever been in a room full of people who were supposed to support you and watched all of them believe a lie about you? If you understand that feeling, you're not alone. That morning in courtroom 4B of the Harris County Probate Court in Houston, Texas, I was surrounded by relatives who shared my last name, yet not one of them stood with me. My stepmother, Diane, had been part of my life since I was 11. She married my father 8 months after my mother passed away from pancreatic cancer. She came in with blonde highlights, a real estate license she never really used, and a smile that could convince anyone. My father, a good man overwhelmed by grief, believed she was helping him. In reality, she gained control. For 17 years, she managed his life, gradually distancing him from his brother, his college friends, and anyone who might have revealed the truth that Diane didn't love him, she loved what he owned. She valued the 4-bedroom house in River Oaks, the lake house in Conroe, and the steady income from the commercial real estate trust my grandfather had built from nothing in 1974. 14 months ago, my father suffered a stroke. He passed away in the ICU at Houston Methodist at 6:47 on a Tuesday morning. I was holding his hand. Diane was in the waiting area, already on the phone with his financial advisor. In the week following his funeral, I learned 3 critical things. First, my father had updated his will 18 months before his death. He left the house to Diane, but the trust, about $4.2 million in commercial property and investments, was left entirely to me. Second, Diane had known about this change for 4 months after secretly finding the draft in his desk during a cardiology appointment. Third, and most important, she had used those 4 months to slowly move money out of the trust's operating account. The withdrawals were small. $5,000 here, $8,000 there. Just enough to fund her lifestyle with arguing immediate scrutiny. By the time my father died, she had transferred over $310,000 into accounts hidden from me. Most people would react immediately. They would confront the situation, hire a lawyer, call relatives, and make everything public. That's exactly what Diane expected. Her strategy depended on emotional reaction. If I lost control, made accusations, or appeared unstable, she would use it as proof that I was unfit to manage the inheritance. That was phase 2 of her plan. First, take the money. Then, destroy credibility. Without credibility, no one believes you when you say something is wrong. It's a calculated tactic. Create harm, then make the victim appear unreliable when they speak up. So I chose not to react. Instead, I did the opposite. I made myself invisible. I moved out of the apartment my father had been helping me pay for and into a small studio in Montrose that cost $800 a month. I kept driving my 10-year-old Civic. I dressed simply, jeans and t-shirts. I told no one what I had discovered. I attended family dinners, smiled across the table at Diane, and allowed her to act supportive, even as she said things like, "Your father would have wanted us to stay close." Meanwhile, every night after everyone left, I sat at my kitchen table with a laptop and black coffee, tracing every transaction she had made. What Diane didn't understand about me was simple. She believed I was just a mid-level analyst with an ordinary job. What she didn't know was that I had spent 6 years conducting forensic audits for a firm specializing in fraud detection. I had worked on cases with the IRS tracking financial misconduct. My entire career was built on following money until it revealed the truth. She wasn't taking advantage of an unprepared daughter. She was targeting someone trained for exactly this situation. Still, I needed more than evidence. I needed her to expose herself fully, so I allowed the activity to continue. I monitored transactions in real time, documenting each one with timestamps, IP addresses, and device data. I traced the destination accounts through corporate filings in Nevada, Wyoming, and Delaware. She had created 3 shell companies, consistently 3, following a familiar pattern. One was Bluebird Properties LLC. Another was Gulf Horizon Consulting. The third, almost ironically, was called Legacy Asset Management. The name alone reflected the situation. For 5 months, I gathered everything, building a detailed record strong enough to support a federal case. Then she acted. Diane filed for emergency conservatorship, claiming I was mentally incapable of managing the trust. She brought in a psychologist, Dr. Edwin Marsh, who, as I later learned, was connected socially through her boyfriend. He submitted a report diagnosing me with severe dissociative disorder and cognitive decline without ever meeting or evaluating me. His conclusions were based entirely on Diane's statements over the phone. No examination, no testing, just a written diagnosis supporting her claim. That's how I ended up in courtroom 4B on a Wednesday morning in January, listening as my stepmother described me as incapable of functioning independently. She told Judge Alderman that I missed bill payments, forgot conversations, and called her late at night confused. She presented herself as concerned, committed to honoring a promise to my father to take care of me. Behind her, the courtroom gallery was filled. My Aunt Colette, her daughters, and even individuals with no real connection placed there to support Diane's narrative. They all listened and nodded. Over months, she had prepared them through calls, meetings, and emotional messages. By the time of the hearing, they were convinced. Her attorney, Curtis Hamley, stood and formally requested that Diane be appointed temporary conservator over the estate, citing financial mismanagement on my part. Judge Alderman then addressed me directly, acknowledging the seriousness of the claims and asking for my response. The room became completely quiet. Everyone expected a reaction: confusion, emotion, or weakness that would confirm Diane's claims. Instead, I stood up calmly, adjusted my blazer, and looked directly at Diane. I held her gaze for several seconds without breaking it. It was deliberate, a clear signal of control and confidence. Then I turned to the judge and said, "I'm listening, Your Honor. I just want to make sure my stepmother has finished speaking. I wouldn't want to interrupt her while she's still under oath." For a brief moment, Diane's expression shifted. It was subtle, but noticeable. She sensed something had changed, even if she didn't yet understand what. Her attorney quickly continued, presenting financial documents he claimed showed a pattern of neglect and mismanagement. He handed a folder to the bailiff. The trust's operating account has lost over $310,000 in the past 11 months. Transfers were made to unknown entities. No oversight, no filings. If that isn't evidence of incapacity, I don't know what is. Judge Alderman flipped through the pages. His expression stayed neutral, but his pen stopped moving, which was a clear signal something had caught his attention. Diane interrupted, unable to hold back. "She doesn't even review her statements, Your Honor. I had to uncover this myself. Over $300,000 gone, and she had no awareness. What kind of person loses that amount without noticing?" The gallery reacted quietly. Aunt Colette leaned toward her daughter. Gerald shook his head. In their view, the conclusion was already clear: a careless, incapable daughter, and Diane stepping in to fix it. I allowed the silence to remain for 5 seconds, enough for the room to settle into that assumption. Then I spoke. "Your Honor, may I approach the bench?" Judge Alderman nodded. I picked up a black binder from the table. It was substantial, close to 200 pages, organized with colored tabs: red for financial records, blue for digital forensics, green for corporate filings, yellow for perjury evidence. "I didn't lose track of $310,000, Your Honor," I said as I placed the binder in front of him. "I tracked every dollar. I know where it went, when it moved, and who authorized it." Diane's expression stayed still, but her hands tightened against the table. I opened to the first red tab. These are the wire transfer confirmations from the trust's operating account. Over the last 11 months, 47 transfers were made to 3 LLCs: Bluebird Properties, Gulf Horizon Consulting, and Legacy Asset Management. I paused briefly, then continued. All 3 entities were incorporated in Wyoming using a registered agent. The public filings list a nominee director, but the beneficial owner, the individual controlling the accounts, is identified in confidential state records. Curtis stood up quickly. "Objection, Your Honor." "This is beyond the scope," I continued without stopping. The beneficial owner of all three companies is Diane Marie Calloway, my stepmother, the same person, requesting control over funds she has already been transferring. The room reacted immediately. Aunt Colette gasped. Gerald leaned forward. Even Diane's guest looked unsettled. Curtis tried to speak, but the attention had shifted. "That's false," Diane said sharply, losing composure for the first time. "She fabricated this. She's delusional. This is exactly what I've been saying. She's paranoid." Judge Alderman raised his hand, and the room fell silent. He looked at Diane with a measured expression, then turned back to me. "Continue, Miss Calloway." I moved to the blue tab. These are the IP logs tied to each transfer. Every transaction originated from the same device, a Dell Inspiron laptop connected to the home network at 1847 Willow Creek Lane, my stepmother's residence, the same property left to her in my father's will. Curtis attempted again to interrupt, but I moved forward to the green tab. Here are the bank statements for those LLCs. The pattern is consistent. Funds move from the trust, remain for 30 to 60 days, then transfer again into a personal brokerage account at Charles Schwab. That account is jointly held by Diane Calloway and an individual named Trevor Fisk. I looked directly at Diane. "Would you like to explain who Trevor Fisk is, or should I?" She said nothing. Her expression shifted, but no response followed. "Trevor Fisk," I continued, "is a real estate agent based in Galveston. He has been in a relationship with my stepmother for approximately 3 years, beginning while my father was still alive and recovering from a cardiac episode. I have supporting records, hotel receipts, communication logs obtained through legal discovery, and a lease agreement for a beachfront condo in Galveston signed by both of them. That property was funded using money taken from the trust." The gallery was silent again, but this time it was different. People were reassessing what they believed. Aunt Colette had tears in her eyes, and for the first time, she looked directly at me with visible regret. Judge Alderman closed the binder and removed his glasses, pausing briefly before addressing Diane. "Mrs. Calloway, did you file this petition knowing you were responsible for those transfers?" Curtis quickly advised her not to respond, but Diane spoke anyway. "It's not what it looks like," she said. "I was managing the funds. Robert authorized me before he died." I responded immediately. "That is incorrect, and I can prove it." I opened the yellow tab, the final section. "My stepmother submitted a document to this court as part of her petition," I explained. Page 14 of her filing includes a letter, allegedly written by my father, granting her broad authority over the trust. It is dated 3 months before his death and includes his signature. Curtis visibly reacted. "I had the letter reviewed by a certified forensic document examiner. The report is included here. The signature is not original. It is a digital copy taken from another document, specifically a 2023 property tax filing, and inserted using image editing software. The metadata of the PDF shows it was created 4 days after my father's death on a computer registered to Curtis Hamley's law office." Curtis raised his voice in protest, but the evidence was already clear. The letter is a forgery, submitted under oath as part of a fraudulent petition. Under Texas Penal Code Section 37.02, this constitutes aggravated perjury, and under Section 32.46, it qualifies as a first-degree felony due to the value involved. Judge Alderman looked at Curtis for an extended moment. "Mr. Hamley, did you prepare that document?" Curtis did not respond. The answer was already evident. Diane immediately shifted blame toward him, claiming he had assured her it would hold up. The coordination between them collapsed under pressure. She then turned toward the gallery, attempting to justify her actions, stating she had been left with nothing after years of commitment. I responded directly, "You kept the money. That's what you kept." Judge Alderman raised his hand again and spoke with finality. "This court finds no evidence of mental incapacity on the part of Miss Calloway. The petition for conservatorship is denied with prejudice. Additionally, this matter is being referred to the Harris County District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation regarding the forged document and fraudulent filing." He then addressed Diane directly, advising her to obtain separate criminal counsel, as her current attorney may also be under investigation. He then turned back to me. "You mentioned that these transactions crossed multiple jurisdictions, Wyoming, Texas, and interstate transfers." I confirmed. He nodded and added that the case would also be referred to the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Texas, as it may meet the criteria for interstate wire fraud. Diane's expression went completely still. Not reactive, not defensive, just still. I sat down calmly. My hands were steady, my breathing controlled. The process felt complete, like reaching the end of a long and demanding effort. Exhaustion was there, but so was clarity, the kind that comes when everything has been resolved through careful, deliberate action. The courtroom cleared out gradually. Aunt Colette came up to me in the hallway, visibly emotional. "Sweetheart," she said, "I didn't know. She told us. She said you were." I stopped her. I know what she said. I wasn't upset with Colette. I understood the situation. People like Diane don't just manipulate their targets. They influence everyone around them. They construct a version of reality that feels convincing enough that even reasonable people accept it. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked. "Because I needed you to believe her," I explained. If there had been doubt, she would have adjusted her strategy. She needed a full audience, everyone in that courtroom agreeing with her. That was the only way she would feel confident enough to move forward with the petition. And the petition was necessary. It put the forged document on official record under oath, which made it a felony. Colette looked at me carefully. "You planned all of this?" "I planned for the possibility," I said. "There's a difference." I stepped outside into the January air. Winter in Houston is mild, cool enough for a jacket, but warm enough to signal change ahead. Standing on the courthouse steps, I took the deepest breath I had taken in 14 months. 3 weeks later, Diane was indicted on 6 counts: theft from an estate, forgery, aggravated perjury, securing execution of a document by deception, money laundering, and a federal charge of wire fraud. Curtis Hamley faced separate charges, including conspiracy and tampering with a government record. Trevor Fisk was listed as an unindicted co-conspirator. The Galveston condo was seized, the brokerage account frozen, and all funds moved through the shell companies were recovered back into the trust. Diane posted bail and called me from an unfamiliar number. I hesitated but answered. "You ruined my life," she said. Her tone was controlled, without emotion. "No, Diane," I replied. "You built something on property that wasn't yours. I just proved ownership." She ended the call. I blocked the number, and then several others she used over the following days. When individuals like her lose, they don't stop. They shift tactics. But I was no longer in a position to be targeted. I sold the lake house in Conroe and used part of the proceeds to establish a scholarship fund in my mother's name at Prairie View A&M. She had been a first-generation college student, and it felt appropriate that her name would now support others with similar paths. I kept the trust, restructured it, replaced the previous financial advisor, and hired a fiduciary accountable only to me. I moved into a better apartment and adopted a 3-legged rescue dog named Verdict, partly out of humor, which my therapist encouraged as a constructive way to cope. Aunt Colette and I began meeting once a month. Initially, the conversations were uncomfortable. She carried guilt for believing Diane, but I shared what I had been told. Guilt is only useful if it leads to meaningful action. She eventually began volunteering at a legal aid clinic, supporting elderly fraud victims. She was effective in that role, likely because she understood what it meant to trust the wrong person. The case took 11 months to move through the courts. Diane accepted a plea agreement, receiving 6 years in state custody followed by probation. Curtis received 3 years and was disbarred. Trevor Fisk cooperated with federal authorities and was given 18 months of home confinement. With the condo seized, that confinement took place at his mother's home, which was an outcome few would have predicted. On the day of Diane's sentencing, I chose not to attend the courthouse. I didn't need to be there. Closure had already come when I presented the evidence. Instead, I visited my mother's grave, located in a small cemetery in the southern part of Houston beneath a large oak tree. I sat there and spoke openly. I explained everything: the trust, Diane's actions, the forged document, and even the dog. I said that I missed her every day and that I wished she had been there to see me take a stand. Then I acknowledged something I had not said before. During those 5 months, while I was tracking the transactions, preparing the case, and maintaining appearances at family gatherings, I was afraid. Every day. I questioned whether I was making the right decision, whether I would be discovered, and whether anyone would ever believe me. But I continued, not because I lacked fear, but because fear was not a valid reason to allow someone to take what my family had built. Strength is often misunderstood as the absence of fear. In reality, it is the ability to act despite it. It is recognizing deception and choosing patience over reaction. Diane relied on speed and visibility. I relied on evidence and timing. She focused on perception. I focused on facts. When everything concluded, it became clear that the situation had been misunderstood from the beginning. I'm not sharing this for sympathy. I'm sharing it because there are people in similar situations, reviewing financial records late at night, questioning their own judgment. If that's you, understand this. You are not mistaken, and you are not alone. Document everything. Speak carefully. And when the moment is right, present the facts clearly and confidently. Resolution doesn't happen by waiting. It is built step by step, often in ways others don't anticipate.